If you really demand it and it's not yet happening in your hands, then you will teach yourself your own higher level of technique because of what you want musically. When we are playing on the softer end of the dynamic scale, if anything, we need more energy. This is the sort of thing that I would do not once a day for 10 minutes, but 3 or 4 times a day for 3 or 4 minutes. It's a very vulnerable spot I'm putting you on. You're completely a mad scientist about what happens if we do this, what happens if we do that.
Today's distinguished guest is Robert Waters. Robert is a professor at Utah State University and first violinist of the acclaimed Fry Street Quartet, which the New York Times called a triumph of ensemble playing. Before that, he co-founded the Jupiter Trio, which won first prize at the Osaka International Chamber Music Competition. Personally, what I loved about Robert's teaching was how analytical and insightful he was, while still keeping musicality at the heart of everything. Hope you enjoy it.
Very, very nice, Grant. It's lovely to hear you, lovely to meet you, and lovely to hear how many good things are already going on with this piece. Your intonation is quite strong. Your sense of sound, especially in the kind of the bigger, more powerful sections, is also strong. And it's also clear to me that you've got like a real connection to the piece. Like this isn't just something that your teacher foisted on you, like, okay, I guess I'll play Sibelius. You really enjoy this piece, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's very obvious and therefore enjoyable to hear. I think that some of the strongest playing that you're doing, at least in the chunk that you just played, is when you have the kind of the most to do with your hands, when the music kind of heats up and you have more notes to play and more kind of passion to deliver to your audience. You do that really well. And in some of the more kind of slower meditative places, like at the very opening or close to the end of the section that you just played, I think there's maybe a little bit more that you can find both in terms of the way that you move sound and therefore the way that you move and create emotion. So that it's not only just like the big loud stuff that's really moving to your audience. In the first several lines or so, I noticed that you very rarely got all the way to the frog, especially when it was not forte. And I thought, oh, we could work on being comfortable with the frog. And then you got about 5 or 6 lines, and then you're using the whole bow, and there's no problem using the frog. But the problem when you don't use the frog in sort of some of the more intimate passages, I can play a perfectly nice sound and a perfectly good general sense of phrasing. But the sound sort of sits and there's not a whole lot of motion inside of the sound. And when we don't have power going for us, one of the things that we need to figure out is how to move sound in a captivating way so that you're creating a whole sonic arena or even universe within which to exist. If things are kind of too small as well as soft, then it's hard for our audience to get really engaged. So open up your bow. Feel free to really use the whole bow every time you go from frog to tip, and vary your bow speed. You don't have to play particularly loud as long as there's always kind of something interesting happening in your sound. Try that. Good. Already better. Already better. So you start up bow and you are going kind of to the D, is that right? Mm-hmm. You can be more obvious about that. Creating a sense, even if you're starting quite softly at the beginning of that up bow, right away there's something happening in that sound that tells us, oh, we're going to somewhere cool. Also with your vibrato as well. So it's not only when I get above a certain dynamic where there's energy in the sound. And then don't be afraid to let the sound get soft as long as there's energy inside of it. Try it. Better. When you start, even though the bow's you're not using a whole lot of bow, make sure that there's energy between the hair and the string. You know, I like to say a lot of the time, in terms of sound production, there's a lot of really useful ways of talking about sound, but you can boil everything down in terms of how we create sound, whether it's something like this very mysterious opening or something that has a lot of very sharp articulation. It's the relationship between the hair and the string. And sometimes we do this, and sometimes we do this, and sometimes we do this. There's an infinite number of ways that those two elements, the hair and the string, can relate to each other. And in this case, what we want to create that sense of mystery and energy is not to be too casual. So you don't need a whole lot of bow, but you do need energy and contact to the string. Good. Now use that energy that you start. It doesn't have to start with, in fact, the slower bow that you can do this, the better. Because then that means you can increase the speed comfortably and create a really compelling gesture. Good. This is going in the right direction. Let's go even farther. So an even slower bow to start, almost as slow as you can manage. And then a faster bow. To me, that feels entirely different. Like the energy in the room just changed because of the energy that you were creating between the hair and the string there. And then you moved it. And then you made another gesture. And there's always this kind of sense of travel in the sound. Can you try once again and keep that going? See how many different ways you can move that energy. So it's not always just, when you go up-o, we have a certain kind of energy getting to the frog and a certain sort of energy going from frog to tip. See if you can vary it now with this new tool. Good, good. So much better, so much better. When you start to get now a little bit bigger, make sure you don't stay in one place. It's still moving, even though it's in a different arena now. Try with that. Yes, excellent. That's really, really good. And even though you played it quite beautifully when you started, I think if you explore this world, it's going to be really great for your audience. And it should be, if you're practicing this kind of with the right approach like you're doing right now, it should be really fun practice. Like you're just discovering all kinds of things that your violin can do that you maybe hadn't known before. So this is great. Because we're short on time, I'm just going to skip to one other spot where there's more sonic work for you to do and maybe a decision to make. Just after the sixths and the octaves, that was really great. And then we have this series. You go up to that A flat multiple times in a row. 4 times, in fact. And it's all kind of on its way down, right? It starts sort of more robustly, more energetically, and then it starts to release all that tension and energy and becomes lighter. And we have a bit of a decision to make as interpreters of this piece. where is truly the softest and the most intimate place? Is it that last A flat, or is it the lower A flat? Is it somewhere in the middle of the arpeggio? Is it here? Could be any one of those places. But if it's too many of them, then you've kind of, the journey that you're bringing your audience on stops being quite so interesting because you're saying the same thing too many times in a row. So what I felt when you played that is that you got a little too light too soon. Not the first time you've heard that, perhaps? Nope. You have a long way to go. I'm skipping quickly. But if it's me, even that fourth A flat still needs a little bit of body. And my favorite moments is that. So that may or may not be your favorite moment, but let's pretend for the time being that it is. Let's start maybe with piano if we can. The first time you hear that, stay full. Let it relax, but slowly relax so that you've got lots of room to make that magic moment. Stay up. Energy. Yes, yeah. And for my money, if you pace it that way, then you can take as much time as you want. That fine. In fact, if it were me, I would try to get to the frog, so you have lots of time, and make the old ladies weep. And then slowly, then the fire comes back, of course. Mm-hmm. Last question for you. That section. How are you practicing it?
Well, the way that I'm supposed to be practicing it is with
Good choice of words.
So you kind of do it with duples or triples.
Yeah.
Where you're like.
Yeah.
And then you do that with triples, so. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then you keep changing the note value, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so sounds like there's more work for you to do there.
Yes.
That will absolutely help not only this passage, but it's just going to create more freedom for your left hand in general. I'll just add a slight wrinkle to it. It's essentially the same thing. So that's essentially the same idea. Right now, I'm changing every time the lower string note changes, it's on the F. But you can also practice. So that's not new to you. Okay, so if you do it, and if you're really religious about it, I would say actually, this is the sort of thing that I would do not once a day for 10 minutes, but 3 or 4 times a day for 3 or 4 minutes. Just so you kind of keep hitting it multiple times. You do that for a month, your ability to play that passage, but also your left hand technique will be transformed. If you do it a couple of times and let it go, nothing's going to transform. Mm-hmm. Lovely to hear you, Grant. Excellent job. Yeah. Lovely, lovely. It's great to hear this piece. Thank you for playing it. I know only recently have I started to hear this with any regularity, and it's such a beautiful piece, and I can tell that you're really enjoying playing it. It was really enjoyable to hear you. There is a difference between creating a sound that is intimate versus a sound that is shy. And though I can really sense that you are enjoying this piece and enjoying all its wonderful character, some of the beginning and the end come across as sounding a little bit shy. So when we're shy, we might have something really important to say, but we're a little bit too afraid to say it. When we have something in an intimate moment, there's actually an incredible amount of energy and conviction behind whatever it is that we're feeling in that moment. And even though it might be soft, there's a lot of energy. And this is a lesson that we all kind of need to learn at a certain point as performers, not just violinists, that when we are playing on the softer end of the dynamic scale, if anything, we need more energy to really ensure that whatever character it is that we're looking for actually reaches our audience. So I'm curious if you've done any work on this piece playing without vibrato. Can you try just the very opening, maybe also with piano, and let's just hear what's going on in the bow. Sometimes our vibrato, as beautiful as it is, starts to mask certain things that happen in the bow. So try once just without any vibrato. Good. Nice. How does it feel to do that?
Weird.
Weird. Say more. Why is it weird?
Well, I could definitely hear my intonation errors.
Yes, that's one benefit.
I think it just like takes away from the character, so I have to put more effort into like making it the character I want it to be.
Right. Yeah. So if your bow is doing really compelling things, then generally speaking, even though maybe it's not the ideal version of how we would play it in a performance, you can still kind of feel like, oh, this is something that I could happily listen to. But more often what happens when we take the vibrato out in a context like this is that there are certain things that are happening in the bow, maybe blank spots where something's not really just saying very much, or even sometimes what happens is we become a little aware that in our own mind we're not clear how we want that particular turn of the phrase to go. And the vibrato just obscures enough of that we kind of get away with that lack of clarity. Something that's also useful to consider inside of this, even though of course in general it's very legato, it's very lyrical, that doesn't mean that we need to play everything at the very smoothest possible level. Like if I play it's nice, it's good sound, but it's a little bit like I took my dentures out. And I can still make a good sound without my dentures. But if I add just a little of extra, I even hesitate to use the word articulation, but she even writes those are not tenuti there. So eventually you can use vibrato to help with those. But if you have a real clear sense of how you want those to go in the bow, you're just kind of creating a whole and a much more specific world of sound and articulation and phrasing in the bow. So see if you can kind of just tap into a more spontaneous sense of creativity with the way that you move sound and the way maybe that you just use a little articulation here to draw more interest for us. Nice, good. So what I'm hearing is that you're starting to have fun playing around with what you can do with this now. That's a great place to be in, because there are, just like the opening of Sibelius that we heard a moment ago, there's an infinite number of different ways that you can move sound. And when you start to really discover what's possible between your hair and your string and your bow and your violin, you can open up areas of expression for this piece, but all kinds of things that you're also doing that are just, they're really fun, and you become a more complete musician that way. Before we finish, have you practiced anything, either the opening of this piece or any piece, just vibrato alone? So let's try that. And it's going to be kind of funny, but let's actually do it with piano. So you're not going to make any sound. But everything that you are just experiencing and experimenting with in terms of what the bow is doing, keep that in your head and just feel like the vibrato is going to amplify whatever that you want out of here. Try. Good. Okay, let's stop there. So I'm going to guess this is also weird, right? You're seemingly making music, but you're making no sound. But I'm going to guess that some of the things that you did with vibrato were a little bit different than when you were just playing it the first time through. So how is that different? How would you say your vibrato is changing now?
I had a more complete idea of like where I wanted it to be wider or bigger.
Yeah. I could
match the bow.
Yes, I could definitely see that there was more variety in what was going on there. Although I think there could be even more. And just like we talked about, sometimes when we take the vibrato away, we're kind of working with the bow, suddenly there's maybe a little bit of a blank spot where we're not sure actually what we want on the bow. I think there might have been a couple of those with the vibrato as well. What happens if you do it one more time? Be even more creative, opening and changing the vibrato so that it's never really in one place for too long. It's always evolving. Nice. Yeah, that's great. That's great. Feeling a little less weird, maybe?
Yeah,
Good.
a little bit.
I would encourage you to do this kind of practice a lot with anything that's really melodic and expressive this way. Really just expose what's going on here, and then of course the final step, which we'll do now, is you get to use both tools at the same time, and hopefully the process of separating them will help the two of them amplify each other. Let's try. Yes. Completely different ballpark in terms of your expressive range now. And we're only like a couple of lines in, right? Excellent work. Hopefully this was a fun little experiment with you that you can continue to work on. Probably there's some places where you felt, oh, I really enjoyed that, and other places where maybe the two hands didn't serve each other quite as well as they could have. The more of this work that you do, separating out the two hands, the clearer it starts to become when you put them together what additional work needs to happen, so it's just everything that you could possibly imagine. But this is a very good track for you. Excellent work. Thank you.
Thank you.
Natalie, if you scooch that way a little bit, just a little closer to the mic.
Sure.
Excellent, very good. Music is here. So this is a short movement, but a lot of people don't give enough credit to how difficult it is, right? It's really quite touchy and easy in all kinds of ways for it to not sound as good as we want it to sound. And so I commend you for all the things that are going well already. You've got a good sense of dance and character. A lot of the intonation is already pretty solid. There's kind of never an end to that work with Bach intonation, right? One quick tip that I'll give you is the transition from the end of the first half back to the beginning, the end of the first half into the second half, and the very end back to the beginning of the second half. Those three transitions, you want to practice a lot.
Yeah.
It's really, I mean, it's so common that you kind of get to the end, like, oh yeah, that was the really good end, and then something sort of happens starting there. So, and somehow we often forget those transitions, that's just as much of a part of the music as, you know, the stuff in the middle. So one way to look at a dance like this is just to simply see that there are these various different kinds of material. We have We have the dotted stuff, yum, ba bum, ba bum, ba bum. We have long slurs, dee da 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 dee da 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 ba da 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 dum, and we have shorter slurs, dee da dee da dee da dee da dee da dee da. Occasionally, there's 6-note slurs as well.
And
But
also, I'm reading from the bottom.
yes,
Yeah.
good.
I mentioned
I'm glad to hear that. I'm glad to hear that. So there's just, if you break it down into those categories, there are actually not very many types of material there. So let's look at them individually. Can you just play those 2 bars? Good. So good sound, good intonation, that's all good. The one thing that we can keep in mind when we have a chunk of beats or a couple of bars in one particular kind of material is to really just make sure that there's a clear shape. And right now, you're doing a really good job of playing that pattern, but it doesn't really change much. It's a little bit... So it could be... Could be all kinds of different things. But it shouldn't just be one thing that doesn't evolve throughout the entire pattern.
Okay.
Do you have a sense of what shape, just off the top of your head, is most interesting to you?
Not really.
Okay, so let's just try. So just a nice simple arc. Yes, good. So that means if we're starting and ending on the kind of softer end of the spectrum, we want to make sure that softer doesn't mean less energetic, since this is still a dance, right?
Right.
So in a dance like this, there aren't dances where we sort of kind of get a little bit sort of lazy and then we're sort of more energized for other things. So when you're softer, just make sure that there's still good energy between the hair and the stick, that you've got good contact. Then you can use a little more blow. And when you make that diminuendo, you still have good energy between that hair and string. It's better. Make a clear arch though, so it starts and ends more softly. Don't start with too much bow. Then use more. Yes, that's right. Now, just for fun, let's do exactly the opposite. Start loud, get softer, and then loud again.
Okay.
And just as we said before, when you get softer, you don't want to lose that energy. Yeah, that's better. So a couple of things that are happening now that I'm sort of pushing you through this process. You're getting more musically creative, but in the act of doing that, you're also having to teach your bow arm certain more kind of sophisticated, more detailed ways of making your way through a particular passage. That if you're not so demanding musically on what a shape should be, then you actually wouldn't be learning so much technically. So there's the musical imagination part of it, but there's also the technique that develops out of that musical imagination. This is a particular concept for me that is an enormous part of becoming not just a fine violinist, but a really, really good practicer. I know I've already talked with David, and he's told me a lot about how you have practice camps and how serious everything is with regards to the kind of work that you're doing. When you start to demand from yourself a more specific musical effect, whether it's the direction of a phrase, a particular kind of sound, a particular kind of articulation, if you really demand it and it's not yet happening in your hands, then you will teach yourself your own higher level of technique because of what you want musically.
Okay.
So that's already starting to happen here. If we, let's go to, so that's now our short slurs. Just play those 2 bars. So this is a little bit the same thing. You have 6 beats which sound awfully similar to each other. It's very admirable on a technical level, but it's not yet so creative. What sort of shape do you think you might want to use?
No, we could try the same thing as last time.
Mm-hmm. So let's try that. So same sort of thing. When you're softer, you don't want to you don't want to get into fluff lands. Still have energy there. Then open up the bow and keep the energy as you go softer.
Okay.
Yes, good. Yes, already it's sort of a more interesting shape. So, and there's really, I would say off the top of my head, 5 or 6 different ways that you could choose to shape even just those 2 bows, or those 2 bars. So you can give some thought as to what direction you want to create here. But I'm going to give you yet another tool. The fact that we have these series of 3-note slurs, that does, depending on what we're looking for, we can alter the articulation inside of that. So I could be very smooth if I wanted to. Let's say that there's a sort of a spinning kind of motion in the middle of this dance, right? So if we want to spin that way, then that might be more the sort of articulation or the sound that we want to use. But if I'm thinking a little bit more, let's say, heel-toe kind of thing, there's a little bit more bounce in that, right?
Yeah.
So you have another tool to think about. And if you want to get fancy, you could actually use both of those for an even more interesting way to make your way through that phrase. So let's keep that arc. Let's keep that arc. We're going to start soft, we're going to get big to the middle, and we're going to come back down. But in addition, let's see if you can start very crisp, smooth it out as you get louder, and then get crisp again.
Okay.
Good, try that a couple of times. Once more. Good, let's slow it down a little bit so you have a little bit more control. Right, so you're now combining 2 rather different ways of using the bow. There's a kind of energized approach to the articulation, but then there's a little bit more sweep with the forearm as you get, and the ability to do this well requires you to be able to move very agilely between one sort of way of using the bow to another. A couple more times. Once more. How about a little bit faster? Can that back end get a little crisper towards the end? Yeah, because then you go to that sort of very much more crisp articulation. So this is another great example of the fact that because I'm now enforcing upon you a particular musical idea, you're having to learn new things about how to use your bow in order for that to really kind of leap off the page in a compelling way. And you're already starting to get it. What were to happen if you demanded of yourself your own set of expectations for what's going to happen in this piece?
Probably be a lot more musically interesting.
It would be a lot more musically interesting. You would teach yourself all kinds of new things about what your hands are capable of doing. And so you would become a better musician. You'd also become just a better technical fiddle player. And this would be a really, really fun thing for everyone to hear. It's already very admirable, but if you take this extra step, then it's going to be super enjoyable and really, really fun, both for you and for your audience. Every time you have one of these each one of these slurs, these longer slurs, needs a certain shape. Let's at the very opening, for instance. Are you going to the main? Or maybe to the middle? Could be any number of things. That's another decision that you have to make. And it might not be the same. That set of long slurs might be different than some of the other long slurs that you have. So even in a relatively short piece of music, this is one of the great things and one of the most challenging things about Bach. He didn't really write very many instructions, right? And so you'll get, if you ask 10 different violinists how a piece of Bach should go, you're going to get 10 different responses. In a way, that's really great. It means that with a lot of really deep thought, you're going to be able to create a Corrente that no one has ever heard before. Even though that Corrente has been played millions of times by millions of violinists over the last 200, 300 years. There are so many different ways to do it and so many different combinations of ideas that if you start to really direct your musical imagination, you will create your own version and you'll teach yourself to be a better violinist in the process. Sound good?
Yeah.
Yeah, nicely done. Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Savannah. Beautiful, beautiful. It's of course an incredibly beautiful piece of music, and a pretty unique piece of music too. I mean, there are a lot of wonderful romantic sonatas for violin, but this one really stands by itself in terms of its character and its emotional message. So I'm gonna guess that you love this piece.
I do.
Yeah. What do you love about it?
It's a lot different, like you just said. It's
Yep.
from like all the other pieces I've played so far.
Yeah.
It's fun. You get to like add your own. So it's kind of like a cadenza.
Mm-hmm. Yes,
A little bit.
it's very free.
Yeah.
Certainly at the very opening, but lots of other places there's opportunity to kind of move sound and move pulse, and be very free with it. Say more about what it is that you attracts you to this piece and the kind of message that you want to bring to your audience.
I just love like the tone this piece has and like all the different colors I can do. It's not a happy song for sure, but and it's fun. It's like in the middle of this 4 movement cadenza that Franck wrote.
Yeah.
It's kind of like the lead up to the 4th one, which is like kind of my favorite, but I think the 3rd one's might be a little better.
Yeah, yeah. It's sort of like it is in some ways the most personal of all the 4 movements, although they're all personal in different ways. My feeling about this, the piece as a whole, and even inside of Franck's music, much of Franck's music is, it's hyper emotional. It's not just beautiful, it's not just expressive, and this isn't just sad. It's incredibly emotionally raw. Like, I don't know if you've ever experienced, or maybe you've been in the presence of somebody who is experiencing an incredibly emotional kind of outburst, and then sort of what happens to that person after that emotional outburst. There's a sense of vulnerability and a sense of tragedy, like you wanted something so badly and then something happened and you're in this state that just feels like there is no hope for any aspect of my life moving forward. I have this image of Franck just being terribly depressed most of the time. Either that or euphorically happy, like happens in the last movement. And so a challenge, I think, of this piece is that we have lots of things to organize with the violin. There's all kinds of accidentals and strange keys that we go through. There's control of the bow arm in order to be able to change our sound and to be free. But at the same time, it can't just be kind of an exercise in good violin playing. That emotional rawness has to be absolutely front and center. Like, if you are not the person suffering from a near emotional breakdown, but you're in the room with somebody for that's happened, you're not on your phone, right? You're not kind of looking out the window. There's just like what's happening to that person is so captivating and so like you feel for that person, right? That's kind of our responsibility here, is to be that conduit for that emotion for an audience so that there is no other place for their attention to be. So I'm not going to talk about violin playing for a moment. I'm going to leave you with that, and I wonder if we could start the very opening and see how directly and emotionally raw you can be for your audience. It's a very vulnerable kind of spot I'm putting you on. So thank you in advance for trying this out.
Okay.
Very nice, very nice. Did that feel different playing it with that mindset?
Yeah.
What was different?
I think just having the focus of being, oh, I'm not playing this in tune, or my bow hand's not doing this amount of pressure. It's just like emotion.
Yeah.
When you're playing, that's what you're thinking about.
Right.
It just flows out of you.
Right. So this is a tricky balance because it's possible to go so far in this direction that you just lose all sort of control here. But the good news is that there's a way to practice where you give yourself a certain amount of time to be in that place, and we're going to do a little bit of that right now. And then you can kind of go back and organize whatever sort of didn't quite work. Then you can organize that a little bit later. But right now we're going to do what I call mad scientist mode. And in mad scientist mode, there's nothing that you can do that could possibly be wrong. Regardless, it doesn't matter what sort of sound you make, doesn't matter what the intonation is, doesn't matter whether the phrasing is great or the phrasing is terrible. You're completely in mad scientist mode. What happens if we do this? What happens if we do that? When we're in mad scientist mode, we play something like we're going to play this first phrase. You're going to do it now. You just did it once. We're going to do it 4 more times. Each time you're going to do it differently. And each time you're going to take it absolutely to the complete extreme. Nothing is wrong. And we're just going to kind of see what happens. Now, in this process, I can guarantee a couple of things will actually take place. One is that you will play some aspects of it some of the times that you will eventually discard. You're like, in looking back on it, like, yeah, that wasn't so great. But there will be some other things that you do, that you try, that are really amazing, that you want to keep, that you probably wouldn't have discovered if you didn't allow yourself to be just this complete crazy mad scientist. Both of those things I'm pretty sure are about to happen. So 4 times in a row, including piano introduction. As soon as you're finished, just take a moment, and when you're ready, then we'll go again. And 4 times, completely different and totally over the cliff.
Okay. Give myself some room.
Yeah, good. Nice. Very good. Can we thank her for that? I very, very rarely ask somebody to do this in public. So thank you for doing that, because it is, you are sort of exposing yourself in a way. So I'm going to guess that that was a different sort of process than what you would normally do with the opening of this.
Yep.
What was different for you?
Just playing it different every time, for sure. Usually when I play, I would like do the same phrase and try to get exactly how I want it.
Yeah.
Playing around with dynamics and like weight and pressure was a lot of fun. And then just with the emotion too, like I kind of chose like a different one each time.
Yep.
And like having that different focus every time.
Yep.
It's crazy.
So you varied quite a number of different things. I mean, everything that you talked about, but also timing and the way that you moved sound, the sort of sounds that you were looking for. So was I right? Were there some things that you played you're like, maybe not so much?
Yeah.
There are a few things. And were there a few things where you're like, oh, I really liked that?
Maybe. I don't know. I feel like I need to like listen to a recording almost to be like.
It could be
Differentiate,
very
you know?
interesting. And of course, these days, that's really easy to do, to record yourself doing that. I can say from my standpoint, I don't know if I'm alone, that there were definitely some things of what you just did, especially the last time, where there was a power of the expression because you were going for such extremes. And this is a piece of extremes. This is a movement of emotional and sonic extremes. I think that, we could sit and talk about certain ways of shifting and vibrato, and if we had gobs and gobs of time, we could get into that detail. But I think you're going to teach yourself a lot of what you need to if you push that envelope of what it is that you're trying to say here. And even your countenance as you play it is, and like when you're about to start, or maybe there's a rest, you look sort of very happy. Like, I love this piece. I'm so happy to be playing this piece. You know what I mean? And for the audience, in that moment, they don't want to see that you're happy.
No.
They're in the middle of this incredible emotional drama. And the more that you can show them that you're about to fall apart, even though, of course, you're very organized here, the more impact you're going to have with them. How much time do we have? Oh boy. Can we skip to bar 32, which is here. Can you find more variety? We won't do the whole mad scientist 5 times in a row sort of approach, but when you have this long series of 16th notes, something else that I think that's often true of somebody in a hyper emotional state, especially after an outburst, is they think this and they think that. Oh, but maybe if it's, oh, but I forgot. And there's this constant sort of evolution of kind of crazy emotions that just cycle through really quickly. If this section of 16th notes is too predictable, then all the kind of weird harmonies and emotional states that Franck is taking us through just start to sound too much the same. So how improvisatory and how changeable on an emotional level and on a sonic level can you be? It sounds quite confident. And most of the time I would say that's an excellent thing. But here, I don't think that's actually what Franck is going for. Could we try once together, you and I? start to change the energy of the room really dramatically from sweet to fierce to sad, rather than just generally nice and good and admirable. Do you want to try one more time?
Yeah.
It's good. This is actually good. What this means is that you're not so much focused on ensuring that everything is going correctly, but you're actually trying to make things up. So when you're in that mode, some of the things that you had practiced that were previously reliable might become unreliable for a moment. Don't be afraid of that. Allow yourself a certain amount of time in the practice, not the whole practice, but a certain amount of time in the practice to be in this more improvisatory, experimental place. And then when something falls apart, then you can go back, fix, and then so you're alternating between really creating, and then fixing, organizing. So it's well-balanced practice that way. Sound good?
Yeah.
Very good. Thank you.
Yay.
Lovely, Isabel. There's a lot to do in this movement, and I admire how well organized everything is. It's really clear that you have a clear sense particularly on a physical level, how you're kind of managing from one place to the next and what it is that you're trying to do. Mm-hmm. Do you have your music here by chance?
I do.
Excellent. So, while I would say that on a physical level it was really very, very well organized, I wasn't always clear what you were trying to say with that organization. Mm-hmm. on a theatrical, on an emotional level. We were just talking about this in the third movement, and it's great actually that we're able to hear this fourth movement directly after hearing the third movement, because the third movement ends in such incredible kind of darkness and tragedy, and even though the fourth movement starts, of course, it's in A major and things are much sunnier. It's not instantly ta-dee-da-dee-da, right? We're not yet in full happiness. There's sort of an emergence of, it is a new day. And actually there is something to live for. I don't have to just be miserable my whole life. Yeah. And then it sort of evolves from there, right? When you started, it felt a little bit like you were kind of right away, like, we're happy. Yeah. Could you allow that sense of optimism and that sense of kind of wonder and just appreciating of the sun to emerge more slowly in the opening? Can you try from the beginning? This is already, at least, of course, this is very subjective, but for my money, that's more effective. It's going to give you more room expressively as the piece moves forward. Yeah. Another really lovely thing about this opening, and not only here, but it's the first time we hear it, the fact that we're in canon or in dialogue with the piano. So I wonder if you could be more of a chamber musician here, and since she is the one who starts always, and then you answer, listen to what she feeds you, the way that she plays it. And then you can either choose to play exactly how she plays, or maybe if you want to try something else, you can hand her a different way of thinking about it. But whatever you do, it's really an intentional dialogue, rather than just beautiful violin playing. Okay. Try. Yes, nice. Different doing it that way, yes? If I were you, and if you have the time to do it together, I would do this a few times, maybe as the leader with you throwing her a few curveballs and experimenting with the various different ways that this could go. You might eventually come to, when you perform it, like you have a certain strategy, certain plan, but with a little bit of extra wiggle room there, so it really does feel like you are creating this dialogue in the moment, and it's not just purely planned. So there's a sweetness now and an emergence of this character, which I didn't hear the first time, which is great. Now, coming up, when here, Dodd, it wasn't so much there, but actually later on, around in the late 80s and the 90s, as it gets, I would say, the happiest, it's the most celebratory, right? You got a little fierce. Ta-dee-da, like, I'm gonna nail this. I wonder, and of course there are some shifts and there are some things to do that we want to ensure go well. But the next step, once you have achieved that, which you already have, is to no longer be fretting about whether or not your hands are doing exactly what you want, and to really make sure that what you're generating for your audience is this uncontained bliss and excitement. So can we try that maybe? Let's back up a little bit.
I can start at the top of this phrase?
Yeah,
Okay.
80. Pick up to 80 is good.
Yeah.
Good. Definitely better. When you do these little cutbacks, the cutback of energy, I think should be, if anything, sort of like not less excitement, but more excitement.
Okay.
Like you just realize, oh, not only this, but that too. Oh my gosh, that's so good. And then it comes back, of course.
Okay.
That's one thing. The other thing is that I think you can, especially these quarter notes, really open up the bow. There's about a bottom third to the quarter of the bow that you're shying away from.
Okay.
If you use everything that is available to you, that sense of joy is going to be that much more palpable for your audience. Try.
Wait, when I go down,
Yeah.
like the bum, 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 do you want
Yeah.
me to get louder or like?
No. It's the age-old issue is of when we get softer, unless we are really ensuring that we are using more energy, it sounds like a relaxation. So. So in both hands, there still has to be a tremendous amount of excitement, even though there's not as much bulk to the sound.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah. Good. Yes. It's definitely. So you were getting closer to the frog. There was more sound, more energy, and then when you got softer, there was still plenty of energy. Now you're not quite making it to the tip.
Okay.
Can I challenge you to use the whole bow everywhere?
Yeah.
And if it feels uncomfortable to you, well, that's good information. That just means that you've got some work to do there.
Yeah.
Maybe some whole bow martelé might not be a bad idea to get more comfortable with
Okay.
that. I'd say that kind of the same thing at the end, of course.
Mm-hmm.
That there's no technical or emotional barrier for you to just be in complete and utter joy.
Okay.
Something else that happened, I don't know if you were aware of it when you were just doing it, you smiled.
I didn't know.
It actually makes a difference for us out there. If
Okay.
not necessarily that you're just sort of like, mugging for the audience,
Yeah.
but there's a clear sort of sense in the way that energy is inhabiting your body that it's very positive and you're very excited.
Okay.
And when things get a little bit challenging, sometimes we do the opposite. We get, that's a little bit what happened for you when you played it through this time. I just want to point out one other spot. There is at 117, from 117 all the way to 133, there's a whole range of different sort of characters that come in and out, and sometimes you're sad and sometimes you're happy. There too, it felt more like you were managing all these weird accidentals and even managing like hairpins and making phrasing clear rather than all of that being in service of this emotional journey.
Okay.
So if the emotional journey is your the primary driver, then you're going to teach yourself more about the tools of playing the violin. And my last thought for you is here, especially this last T. Could you use a couple of words to describe the sound and the energy there? What's the character?
I feel like the energy there is like, I like grand.
Grand.
I think of it just kind of, I don't know, just like at the top of like everything else.
Yeah.
Like it's just kind of the climax, I feel like, of the whole piece.
Yes. It is in some ways the most dramatic of many dramatic moments in the piece. It is certainly one of the most dramatic. I would add to that because this is a theme that comes from earlier, And it comes from a place which is this more emotionally desperate kind of music from the third movement. For my taste, it was a little too leaning in this beautiful lyrical way.
Okay.
And while is very, it's effective in its way, adding a little would just bring that sense of not nostalgia. What am I saying? The memory of this pain,
Okay.
which is then released into the joy finally at the end. I think you can find more of that sense of drama and pain. So it's not just beautiful and grand, but also remembering the bad times before you return to the good times.
Yeah.
Thank you, Isabel.
Thank
Beautiful.
you so much.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Jenna. Very well done. Very well done. What I noticed about your playing is that you have command, and in certain moments, a really lovely sound. Very warm, very rich, very round and lush, which is going to serve you really well in this piece. But it's not consistent command. It's a little bit in and out. So I wanted to do a little bit of work just to kind of zero in on that and see if we can get you kind of connected to the string and connected to your sound more consistently so you can use it more intentionally. It sometimes exactly what we want in music is a sound that is constantly in motion and not stuck in one place too much. But whatever it is, we want it to be intentional. And it feels right now that there's just certain things that could be more organized so that it is completely intentional what you do. So can we start via the sixth? What I want you to do, find that first six and just go back and forth and see if you can ensure that the sound at the frog all the way to the tip and back is really consistent. Something that I noticed, maybe this isn't the first time you've heard it, is the bow likes to travel out there towards the tip. Also, sometimes what happens is that you lose flat hair, and you really want flat hair. At the very least, if not the whole bow from the lower quarter, let's say, all the way to the tip should be completely flat and consistent. Try that. So that's better. And what I notice when you had the long note, it was very, very consistent and good. But when you went faster, it was not so consistent. So now you've just done it a couple of times with slower bow. As you get confident, go faster and see if you can keep it still consistent. Faster bow. Faster bow. Good. So there's a speed that you're very comfortable with, and there's a bow speed where you're kind of comfortable with, and then past that it starts not to be so comfortable anymore. So I would spend some time, double stops are a great place to do this because the level between A and E has to be really consistent. Anytime that starts to happen, even on a tiny bit, we hear it instantly. So the sense of consistency is further kind of enforced by the fact that we have to generate sound out of two strings equally. So you could do some faster bows up at the tip, in the middle, lower, and then lower 2/3. Upper 2/3, and eventually, and you hear every time that I use more bow, I get more sound. It's funny how that works. But against an orchestra of an enormous sort of force of sound that's coming behind you when you're playing Sibelius Concerto, we have to put a real premium on the amount of sound that we're producing and the consistency of that sound and the energy behind it. So there's some things for you to iron out with your bow arm there. Similarly, when we have on that first page, we've got all these runs where we kind of move quickly for a little while, then we get to a long note, and then some more fast stuff. And when you get to the long notes, by and large, the sound is really good. But all the sort of quick stuff that happens, we lose it, and it's not necessarily because your left hand is doing anything wrong. Your left hand in general is quite reliable, but the connection to the string and the string crossings get just enough lacking in contact and consistency of contact that's when things start to get a little bit garbled. So can we practice a very slow version? Like that. Okay, so the places to look for where we are most likely to have the bow get spit out of the string a little bit is when we cross strings. So string crossings in a series of long runs like this, we really want to avoid like really quick bow changes or string crossings like that. That is going to heighten the possibility that our sound becomes less consistent. So just very, very, very gluey. Can you actually just try that? Can you hear that yours are a little bit more abrupt than mine? So the nice thing about string crossings, we have all this play in between each string, right? I can play on the A string, but I actually have all kinds of wiggle room there. You can use that wiggle room so I'm in a way almost overlapping the strings to create a more seamless legato. Try that. Good. And as you change, ensure that whatever it is that is generating that energy into the string, that does not get interrupted at all from string to string. There's no hop, there's no kind of bump that happens. Once more. Go a little slower with the bow. So it's really sticky. The second one was better than the first one. I heard. Can you do every single string crossing and also then. So use that space that you have to get really close to the A without hitting the A until it's time. Yes, that's very good. So I would practice, spend a little time doing that, and then when you feel confident with that, put a microscope on every single string crossing, and that means that the energy of the bow is exactly what you were just doing, really, really consistent. But now as we add the left hand, the added element is that the first finger on the new string has to be ahead of time. Even if I'm really good with the bow, let's do that faster, right? Doesn't sound terrible when I go slower. But as I go faster, it loses that sort of sense of energy and consistency throughout. So if you get better at that slow, and it might take you some time to get good at that slow because it's both of these elements. It's the right hand element and then the left hand anticipation. So you have to master it slow first. It's really easy for this particular technique when you're trying to combine the two hands together for us to try and skip steps. Generally doesn't turn out too well. So you want to get that really good slow, but eventually, and it sounds now like it's just one gesture. And there won't be nearly as many holes inside of these gestures that you're trying to make. Does that make sense? Good. Final thing for you. Everyone's favorite passage. How are you practicing it so far? What sorts of things do you do?
Rhythm.
Rhythm, good. Show me that. How are you practicing the rhythms? Good. And then the flip side, that other rhythm, good. Any other practice techniques there?
Been doing just my right hand alone.
Do you literally just on the open G?
Yeah.
Show me that. Okay, so one thing that I'm noticing there is that you're slightly down bow heavy. I'm exaggerating a little bit, but that will only make the coordination between the two hands harder. So you want really, really super even downs and ups. First slow. And then faster so that you can't hear any difference between the two. That's one thing. I would also practice, if you're not already, slurred. That's going to expose the shifts. You want those shifts nice and smooth, both in a slow tempo and in a fast tempo. And then when you put the two hands together, assuming that you've got a really even détaché, we have now a coordination problem between the two hands. And by and large, the way we fix those coordination problems is that we determine that the bow is king. That it's not going to stop for anybody. And the moment that our left hand gets kind of out of whack, it forces our bow to chase our left hand, and that very rarely ends well. So if you train yourself, see, I just missed that shift. That one down shift was a little bit late. And I exposed that by being super, super even here. When that coordination and timing between the two hands is really perfected at a slow tempo, so I'm very, very even here. Then getting faster suddenly becomes much easier because all those timing things where the left hand was maybe a little late to this shift or the fourth finger wasn't quite where it needed to be, those things are solved at a slower tempo, and then faster somehow magically becomes a lot easier. Sound good? Very lovely to hear you, Jenna. I wish we could do more, but I think we're out of time. Yeah, absolutely.
And thanks so much to Robert.
Thank you to everyone who performed. This is a real joy for me to hear so much great violin playing and really good work that's happening. Thank you so much to David for having me, and for all of you who are here. This has been really great.
Thanks, Robert.
Yeah.